What is the rarest achievement in Grand Prix motorcycle racing history? Well, it's probably something that happened to someone named John or Bob on the Isle of Man in the 1950s. Like that time John Surtees hit a cow during practice and then won the race on his backup machine. That'll probably never happen again. In reality, there is no single rarest achievement in MotoGP history. But don't click off the video just yet. We've still got some pretty cool stuff to talk about. My name is B, this is the Beehive Paddock, and these are the rarest achievements in MotoGP history. Being world champion is pretty rare. Of the thousands of riders to take to the line over the years, 130 have claimed the world title in a solo class. Being able to win a world championship twice is even rarer, with only 57 riders having done that. 3 championships is something only 33 riders have done. Only 20 riders boast 4 or more, and just 13 have 5 or more. 10 riders have 6, 8 riders have 7 or more. Interestingly, there are no riders with 8 world titles. However, 4 riders have exactly 9. However, 2 riders stand above everyone else and have broken the double digits in terms of world championships. Angel Nieto and Giacomo Agostini, with 13 and 15 titles respectively. As we can see, winning championships is tough work, but defending them is even more difficult. Or so you'd think. A surprisingly high number of riders have world title winning streaks. A rider has gotten 2 or more titles in a row in the same class 52 times. But these 52 successful defenses came from 37 riders, meaning there are some riders with multiple championship streaks. Unsurprisingly, the longer the streak, the less common it becomes. And only 9 riders have achieved 4 or more titles in a row. They're worth taking a look at. Honda's first superstar Jim Redman, who went on a run of 4 consecutive 350cc titles with Honda from 1962 to 1965. One of the best all-rounders of all time, Mike Halewood. 4 of his 9 championships came with MV Agusta in the 500cc Premier class, also between 1962 and 1965. The greatest lightweight specialist of all time, Angel Nieto. One of his 4 title streaks spanned 4 years, between 1981 and 1984 in the 125cc class. He's one of very few riders to switch manufacturers in the middle of his streak, winning the first title with Minarelli before moving to Garelli for the later 3. Another lightweight specialist and the most successful Swiss rider of all time, Stefan Dorflinger won the lightest class from 1982 to 1985. During this time, the class changed from 50cc to 80cc, and Dorflinger won the last 2 and first 2 championships of each of them respectively, doing so amazingly with 3 different manufacturers: Kreidler, Zundap, and Krauser. Max Biaggi dominated the 250cc class in the 1990s, winning 4 titles in a row from 1994 to 1997. And Marc Marquez is the most recent rider to hold a 4-peat in MotoGP, doing so with the Honda factory team between 2016 and 2019. 2 riders have had streaks of 5 championships in a row, both of them in the Premier class. Mick Doohan with the Honda factory team between 1994 and 1998, and Valentino Rossi from 2001 to 2005. Rossi's streak saw probably the most change among any of them, with the Premier class changing from 500cc 2-strokes to 990cc 4-strokes, and he himself moving from Honda to Yamaha. Finally, there have been 2 streaks which stand above all others in their magnitude. 7 championships in a row, both of them achieved by the same rider, Giacomo Agostini with MV Agusta. Pretty unquestionably the most dominant bike rider duo of all time. In the 350cc class, Agostini held the throne from 1968 to 1974. While in the Premier class, he was the king from 1966 to 1972. But it's not just the amount of titles that can make them special. Sometimes it's about the content of the championships themselves. In Grand Prix history, there have been 6 seasons in which a rider has won every single race. The first one came in the very first season, where Freddie Frith took the 350cc title without losing a single race. It would be 10 years before anyone would repeat this accomplishment. John Surtees would one-up Frith by taking not just the 350cc title undefeated, but also going perfect in the Premier class that same season. In 1964, Jim Redman would win the longest undefeated season yet, finishing with 8 out of 8 Grand Prix wins in the 350cc class. The final perfect seasons came in 1968, when Giacomo Agostini would finish with 10 out of 10 wins in the 500cc class and 7 out of 7 wins in the 350s. Agostini would remain undefeated in both classes for 2 more years, but the MV Agusta factory team would not attend every round, meaning his 1969 and 1970 campaigns fall just short. As an aside, it is worth noting that Rupert Hollis was on track for a perfect season in 1954, winning the first 4 out of 6 rounds of the 125cc season. However, due to a fatal accident, his season remained incomplete. What's even rarer than a season where a rider wins every round is a season where a rider wins none of the races and still becomes world champion. This has only happened twice. The first was in 1989, when Derby's Manuel Herreros won the final 80cc world title with an impressive display of consistency. Across 6 races, he finished 5th or better in all of them. In fact, Stefan Dorflinger, second in the championship, also did not take any wins that year. Peter Otto, who won half the races that season, finished 3rd, but he only scored points in 4 races, and the value of a win compared to a second place was lower back in those days. The second, and as of today final time a rider won a championship with no race wins came in 1999, in a season which was much longer. Emilio Alzamora took his 125 Honda through podium battle after podium battle. He never quite managed to secure a win, but only missed points once across the whole season. Despite the best efforts of Marco Melandri to slow him down at the final round of the year, Alzamora still beat him by a single point. Melandri's intentional blocking maneuvers in that race led to a fine of 1,000 Swiss francs. There are other times where it can be a certain change that makes a title so unlikely. While 6 riders have won championships in the Premier class with 2 different manufacturers, there's only 2 of them who have done it back-to-back. In 1988, Eddie Lawson won his 3rd 500cc title with Yamaha, and in a shock move, moved to Honda for 1989. The 89 Honda was a brutal machine, and he and legendary mechanic Irv Kanemoto spent the full season trying to tame it, trying no less than 11 different chassis configurations across the season, but eventually coming out on top. Making the opposite move was Valentino Rossi in 2004. After winning his 3rd consecutive title with Honda in 2003, he would make a move to a struggling Yamaha for 2004. Rossi, Jeremy Burgess, and Yamaha would work together and make enormous progress on the bike during the off-season. It still wasn't on the level of the Honda, but despite this, Rossi was still able to take the bike to a title in 2004. Rossi is part of another very exclusive Premier Class club. He is one of only 2 riders to have won championships on 2-stroke and 4-stroke machines. Having first joined the top class in 2000 during the 500cc era, he would win the 500cc title in 2001. And would win 6 titles on 4-strokes once the class became MotoGP. Agostini is the only other rider to have achieved this, and he had arguably a bigger hill to climb. Unlike Rossi, the change for him came much later in his career. He won 7 Premier Class titles in a row with MV Agusta, and found himself on a subpar machine in 1973, and he would lose the title for the first time in over half a decade. He would choose to move to Yamaha, who were one of the factories starting to experiment with 2-stroke technology. Unlike Rossi, he had to adapt to the 2-stroke machines while his rivals were still on familiar 4-strokes. But in his second year with Yamaha, he would come through to win the first ever 500cc 2-stroke title and his final world championship. But championships aren't everything. Let's take a look at some winning accomplishments. Marco Bezzecchi just became the 8th rider in history to win 5 successive Premier Class Grands Prix, joining a pantheon of legendary names. However, he is still a long way from the record. Marc Marquez, Mick Doohan, and Giacomo Agostini each had 10 consecutive race wins. John Surtees managed 11 in a row across 3 different seasons. Mike Hailwood secured 12 in a row between 1963 and 1964, but the record by a wide margin, and in my personal opinion, one of the most unbreakable records in Grand Prix motorcycle racing history, is 20 consecutive Premier Class wins by Giacomo Agostini. He achieved this through combining his perfect season in 1968 with winning the first 10 rounds of the 1969 season, 20 consecutive Grand Prix wins. It's been years since a rider finished 20 races in a row, much less won them all. This will probably never happen again. Only 16 riders have won multiple championships in one season, with only Jeff Duke, John Surtees, Gary Hocking, Giacomo Agostini, and Freddie Spencer winning the Premier Class and another class in the same season. Nobody has ever won 3 classes in the same season, but in 1967, Mike Hailwood got very close. He won the 250 and 350cc championships and tied Giacomo Agostini for points in the 500s. The season prior, Hailwood also competed in all 3 classes, and if you calculated his points totals across all those classes with the modern system, he earned over 500 points in a single season in 1966. That would have been a record that wouldn't have been broken for almost 60 years. Another rare achievement is winning on a bad bike. Winning a Grand Prix on a bike that finished poorly in the constructors' standings that year is really difficult to do. 1, you're on a bad bike, and 2, if you're too good and you keep winning on a bad bike, the bike is going to rise in the constructors' standings. For the first 70 years of the Grand Prix Motorcycle Racing Championships, there were only 2 riders who won a Grand Prix on a bike that would finish 5th in the Constructors' Championship standings that year. They were František Šťastný on his Java CZ, the only win ever for the factory, in 1966 in East Germany. And 3 years later, in 1969, Godfrey Nash in Yugoslavia would win the race on a Norton. These were the only 2 examples of this ever, until this decade, where it's happened 5 times. Alex Rins has done it 3 times and is the only rider to do it with 2 different manufacturers. He's done it twice with Suzuki and once with Honda. Grand Prix motorcycle racing has changed a lot over the course of its existence, and a lot of records will never be broken simply because things don't work the same way that they used to. Whether it be rule changes or a change in the culture of the championship, something would have to fundamentally change about the way we view it today in order for these records to fall. Agostini's record 15 titles will likely never be touched simply because riders don't compete in multiple classes anymore. With classes nowadays mostly being seen as a ladder and much longer calendars, it simply doesn't make sense. Similarly, we will probably never see any rider be as dominant as peak Agostini because there will likely never be a bike as far ahead of the competition as the MV of his day. Or Chan On-Chu's record as the youngest Grand Prix winner. He was only 15 years and 115 days old when he won the 2018 Valencian Grand Prix. However, after this, the minimum age for Moto3 was raised, and now the absolute youngest you can be is 17 years old, meaning as it currently stands, this record will not be broken. In a similar vein, we can look at some of the oldest winners of all time. A club that probably won't expand anytime soon is the Over 40 Winners Club. 9 riders have become Grand Prix winners over the age of 40. The oldest was Arthur Wheeler, who won the 1962 250cc Argentine Grand Prix at the age of 46 years and 70 days. The Argentine Grand Prix was only in its 2nd year, and Wheeler was the only European privateer in attendance, riding a Moto Guzzi, a factory which had pulled out of the championship 5 seasons prior. He would take his first Grand Prix win in 8 years and the last of his career. The oldest Premier Class winner is Fergus Anderson. His moment came at the 1953 Spanish Grand Prix, and of everything we discussed today, in my opinion, this win by Fergus Anderson is the most unlikely. The weather in Barcelona was nothing less than awful. A downpouring of rain had caused water to pool on the streets. In a rare move, some of the factories elected to field their 350cc machines in the 500cc Premier Class due to the tight winding nature of the circuit combined with the dismal conditions. The 350cc Moto Guzzis seemed to be faring the best, with Ken Kavanagh and Fergus Anderson both on the provisional podium, being led by Reg Armstrong's 500cc Gilera. Unfortunately for some, the conditions proved fatal for their bikes, with many riders suffering retirements due to the conditions. These included the 1st and 2nd place runners Armstrong and Kavanagh, but Fergus Anderson's bike held on, taking him to victory at an average race speed of just 60 miles an hour. Everything about this race was unlikely. Most of it could never happen again. It was a race running conditions which no race would ever be run in today. A lot of riders were using bikes from a smaller class, and the winner was 44 years and 257 days old. While it's far from a direct equivalent, we would need the oldest rider on the grid today, Johan Zarco, to race for another 10 years and then win a MotoGP race on a Moto2 bike in order to see this happen again. Johan Zarco is a great rider, but it's hard to see that being possible. We have barely scratched the surface of MotoGP achievements in this video. I mostly just wanted to yap about some stuff that I thought was cool, and I enjoyed highlighting some of the best records and achievements in MotoGP history. If you enjoyed too, I would appreciate a like and subscribe. If you're on a mobile device, you can use our hype points to help boost this video in the algorithm. I'm coming back from a long break, and YouTube seems to not be liking me that much right now, so any support would be appreciated. Before we head out today, a special thank you to my channel members: MVP2112, Venturian CRO, Sean, Motosapien, B, Jack the World's Fastest Maori, Drew Gibbs, Really Very Bored 1, Carl Ruppersberg, Friday42, Troy the Boy, Moneypenny, Luis Campos, Ian Ellison, ASX91, Derek Briganti, and Silver Harbor Spotlight. Thank you all for supporting the channel in the best way possible. Thank you all very much for watching, and have a fantastic day.